This is U3LO1 about cells and cell history. Before we begin, how many cells do you think could fit on the head of a pin? Take a guess. Cells are pretty tiny, and if you consider that and the fact that a pinhead is pretty tiny too, we could fit about 1,600 average size cells. It's quite a bit. What exactly is a cell? Its book definition is the smallest unit of life. Another way to word it, it's the smallest thing that can be considered alive. Anything smaller than that, atoms, molecules, subatomic particles, is not alive. We built up. We started with atoms. We said 2 or more atoms together make molecules and compounds. Molecules and compounds make organelles, which we're going to look at later on in these videos. And then organelles are inside of cells. A cell is alive. Before we get into cells themselves, let's just go through a little bit of history and how they were discovered. In 1665, Robert Hooke was viewing some plant material under the microscope, and it happened to be that he was looking at cork. The view on the right shows you what he saw. The picture in the middle is what his microscope looked like. He called the spaces that he saw cells because they looked like little places where a monk would live. Now, he wasn't actually correct because what he was seeing was the outer bark that was left over from where the cells used to live. They did live in those spaces, but they actually weren't cells themselves. He got us off to a good start, though. Along came Anton van Leeuwenhoek in 1673. He had the advantage of better microscopes with more magnification, and he looked at an organism down at the bottom left there called Spirogyra. And so that made him the first person to see cells that were actually alive. With Hooke's work and Leeuwenhoek's work and the work of many other scientists that were not famous enough to get mentioned in biology books, we came up with what's called the cell theory. And there's 3 parts to this theory. Part number 1 states that all life must be made out of 1 or more cells. Anything that's alive is going to be made out of cells. We learned about that in the characteristics of life. At the beginning of this video, we said that a cell is the smallest thing that's considered alive. So, anything that's alive is made out of at least 1 cell. Part of cell theory number 2. Cells only arise from pre-existing cells. What this means is that cells don't just spontaneously appear out of nowhere. They need to come from a cell that's already been there. When we go through mitosis, meiosis, etc., that's where all these things are going to come up again. A cell has to have basically a parent cell in order to make, as you can see in the picture, what are called daughter cells. And the last part of the cell theory is that the cell is the basic unit of life. Lots of different organisms across Earth, plants, animals, bacteria, etc., and we are all united by the fact that the cell is the most basic thing that makes all of us up. And again, a cell is the smallest thing that is considered alive. And with that, we arrive at the end of this video already. I want you to know the 3 parts of the cell theory. All life is made out of 1 or more cells. Cells only arise from pre-existing cells, and the cell is the basic unit of life. I also want you to know the definition of a cell, the smallest unit that can be considered alive, and you should recognize the names Robert Hooke and Anton van Leeuwenhoek and their contributions to discovering cells.